Hey, today I have got one of the hottest industries in the market right now, the unique fitness concepts. I've got a founder and owner of one of the up and coming brands. So stick around and listen in.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
Hey, welcome everybody. I have got Matt Hunt from HEW. I'm going to let him explain what that means. But Matt, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And I'm going to let you, Matt and I have known each other for several years, worked on some things together, and a good fellow follower of Jesus. And so excited to have Matt here on the call. Matt, I'm going to let you, if you would, just kind of in your own words, just introduce yourself, your company, and just a little bit about what you guys do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I do appreciate it. HEW is an acronym which stands for Hard Exercise Works. Our original name was Hard Exercise Works, and we left it at that. And then we had some consultants come in, and they interviewed all of our customers at about 8 locations at the time. We're at 17 locations right now, but the customers called it HEW because Hard Exercise Works is a mouthful. So from HEW, they said, hey, we work out at HEW. And then there was a ton of play on words on that, like, do you HEW? Are you a human? So, they started to go through all that. We took their advice, changed the name to HEW Fitness, and that's how the story began. My background is I've been an athlete my whole life. And when I was in college, through wrestling, met a bunch of guys and these are years ago because I'm 61 years old. So, but they would recruit for the SEAL program. Mm-hmm. And so though the guys who were friends of mine ultimately became SEALs, and they started to venture off into adventure racing and reached back out to me and said, hey, we know you're in the fitness industry. We'd like to do some adventure races. Would you like to hop along? And what I found is a lot of these guys were bonking during the adventure races, which were typically 45 hours. They were shortened ones, but they were what they call non-expeditionary adventure races. So long story short, they were like, hey, we've got to get our fitness level up. And I started writing some workouts for them, which led me to connections in the Special Forces community and in all the branches. And that's kind of how it started. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute, if we do these high intensity workouts to give them the proper training, I wonder if there's a way to market it and sell it. And through that, I met Greg Glassman, who was the founder of CrossFit, and I worked as a subject matter expert for them for about a year. And that's kind of how the business really formed.
That's great. That's great. And Matt, was one of the times I was down and spent some time with you. I got to do one of the workouts, and it's just awesome. It's just an awesome workout. So, tell me a little bit more now about, I appreciate that introduction and a little bit of the history. So, as you started thinking through this, what was some of your original vision? Leaders have a vision typically when they start these startup companies, and so talk to us a little bit about your vision, and then has it changed at all? Now that you're open, you're operating, you got 17 units, has that been changing at all? Now that the rubber's hitting the road.
Yeah, I think that we really didn't have a very solidified vision. I always knew that I would be in this business, and I always felt like I would be successful. When I say that, successful on my terms, not necessarily, having to have 100 locations or be a multimillionaire or any of that. I really tried to focus on, I know people inherently want to be fit, and fitness to most of the people is having a athletic and strong physique. I just think it's a innate human quality that we want to be the best we can be in our body. So I figured if I felt that way, that at least half of the Americans felt that way. And so that's how I did it, because I just loved doing it. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So that's how the business really started. And then it kind of morphed from there of like finding customers who felt the same way, and then understanding what does the customer really want, building the experience around what the customer really desired, not necessarily what I wanted, but it just happened to be that those two coincided very well together. So we listen to our customers a lot.
Yeah, and that's, honestly, I think that's one of the things that businesses miss. Businesses have this idea that what they want to do and what they want to put out into the marketplace, and it isn't necessarily bad, but in a lot of cases, as you said, they haven't really connected with what the customer wants. And I loved, one of the things that I took away when I spent some time with you and did the workouts, was, as you mentioned, you used the word experience. And one of the things that I felt was there was community there. It was fun working out with other people, and people knew I had never done it before, never done that workout. And wow, almost at every station, people were coming up and saying, "Hey, do it this way, or try this, or this will help you." So talk a little bit about that experience. I think that's what's really unique about you guys.
Yeah, so that really was born out of one of our number one tenets is that our employees have to have fun. And as strange as it sounds, if the employees are having fun and are fully trained on what they need to do, then that bleeds into the customers. The old adage, the customer is always right, is something we say that's not factual at all. It's the employees are always right. But if the employees are right and feel ownership in what they do and love it, it's an extension to the customers, which makes the customers feel as though they are right. And then that allows us to handle any issues with customers, to make whatever their issue may be, to correct it properly. So I'm glad you said that. Community, you hear the term bantered about in the industry. Hey, we have a great community, but we focus our efforts on that. We treat it like a family. So if somebody is really having an issue, we never proselytize to them. It just becomes inherent after a while when you attend our locations that these guys, there's something special about us. And at the end of the day, it's really the Holy Spirit just infused throughout the whole business. But we make sure that, hey, if you have an issue, come up to us. We'll pray for you. We'll do whatever, but we don't go overboard with it. You wouldn't even know in many of the locations, but everybody says, I can't put my thumb on it. There's something special about this place. So I give,
And in talking to your employees a little bit when I was down there, I got the real sense that, for example, if they see somebody's missed a couple of workouts, they'll actually pick up the phone and call those people, reach out, and there's a caring beyond even just, hey, did you have a good workout? There seems to be a real deeper caring. So the show attracts emerging brand owners like yourself. The show attracts broker consultants as well as people who want to buy franchises. But I always like to talk about with an owner and a founder like yourself. Were there challenges? What maybe were some of the challenges? Did you anticipate them or not? And then on the flip side, I always love to talk about, well, what have been some of your highest, your highlights or your greatest successes? So let's start with the challenges.
Yeah. So what I've learned from being in this industry, we just fell into franchising by chance. We originally started up opening joint venture models with the other individuals, and realized as we were doing that, we would reach out within our industry, which is how I came across you, by the way. So I want to preface that by saying we're always asking a ton of questions. And we realized we were kind of operating like a franchise and we didn't want to do anything illegal.
Right.
So we met some people in the industry, then years later, so we formed a franchise, and then years later, met people like you who had a lot of experience within the industry. And I found that in the franchise industry, everybody was genuinely willing to help. So of course, when you came down and consulted with us, that was tremendous. But challenges we faced are just like any other business. I think the largest challenge we faced, obviously, was when COVID hit. And at that point, we had hired a fractional CEO named Jeff Sturgis, well known in the industry. And he we just mapped out a game plan over the period of a week. He was extremely informative. I also met the owners of Anytime Fitness. They helped us out. So we took all these notes and said, okay, if we're going to survive in the fitness industry, what do we do? And we immediately started filing for all the loans through the EIDL loan and anything that the SBA could offer. I mean, we were constantly on the internet searching, how do we figure this out? Because we were in 4 different states, 4 different regulatory states. 2 were Democratic states, 2 were Republican states. Everything was handled differently by state. So we just had to navigate through all that. But Jeff kept us on point. We would meet literally twice a day. And he held us accountable to getting all this stuff done, because it was really an urgent battle for survival. We developed a solid plan, held Zoom meetings every week with everybody, made sure they were applying for the loans, how to space off their gyms in segments of 6 feet apart so that we could stay operational. And I'll tell you, to this day, every single one of them is open, which is I think a huge success. But I credit it to people like yourself and everybody who we reached out to in the industry that gave us great advice.
Great. Thanks. And I happen to be, before we move on to your successes, I happen to be a fractional CEO for another large brand during that same time period. And what I clearly saw was the leadership that was proactive were the companies that not only survived, that they were ready to thrive when things all opened back up again. And I saw many competitors to that company that were kind of what we say up here in the Northeast, that deer in a headlight look.
Yeah.
You know, they just really, you could just see their messaging, what they were doing in the marketplace and stuff. It was as if nothing had changed. And it was so important that leaders like yourself, stepped up and was proactive with helping their franchise partners.
And just to add to that,
yeah.
So the 2 things that really worked were we went immediately to Zoom, held 10 classes a day that we operate in each of the locations. We did it through Zoom where people could stay at home and follow. That helped tremendously. And just a fact here, 30% of the fitness businesses in America during that time frame closed to never to reopen. So we were extremely fortunate that we had, again, people like yourself who were kind of leading the ship and helping us out, telling us what to do.
Yeah. Thanks. And you guys, I think from what I recall, some of your workouts are actually online. If somebody can't make it to the gym because they're traveling, they've got resources that they can use as a member. So I could see how you guys could transition. And one of the keys that we found was a level of communication. Even if you're a company that communicates well during that challenge, you had to over communicate. So like you said, your Zoom meetings with your franchise partners, with your leadership team. I remember, this happened to be a global franchise, and I remember being on a call with like 50 leaders from around the world. And that was what successful companies did. So think about so let's transition to the good stuff. Share some what you felt some of your real successes. What's been the reward and the fulfillment? Some examples of some of that.
Yeah, for the business, I'll do business and personal. For the business, we really were able to get clear on what we do. We're not ashamed to say that we are hard exercise, and it works, honestly. So in essence, it's CrossFit training made possible for everyone. It's not the classic CrossFit model, because our average customer is a 40-year-old female, about 20 pounds overweight, and that's about 60% of our model. But it just allowed us to really hone in and clarify that message, and we communicate it well through all our advertisements and our company motto. For a personal thing, I think I learned about being patient, trusting in God. We've been able to find really dedicated owners. So I think there's been a lot of success with that, and not panicking. The world's not coming to an end kind of thing. But it taught me a lot about just being, I think, more humble and patience, probably the best thing.
That's awesome. Thanks for getting so genuine. I think listeners like when people are genuine. So thanks, Matt, for sharing that way. So you talked about your owners. So let me transition to, I've got 2 more questions. let's transition to your owners again, because we'll have consultants, brokers on the call. We'll have people that know people or people themselves who might want to get into the fitness industry. So who are you looking for? What do your owners typically look like? And do you have any target markets geographically that you might be looking to open in?
Well, that's a great question. So after COVID, what we realized is our most successful owner is somebody who's a former client. So we really only consider, I get probably about 5 inquiries per week, and probably 2 per month, so 5 per week just from the outside market. We do no advertising. These are just people that go to our website, see the franchising, and fill out the inquiry. But our most successful owners are usually a husband and wife team between the ages of 25 to 35. The bulk of them are in their early 30s.
Okay.
They're our most successful owners by far, and they get our model. So we just made the decision in the beginning of 2021 that we were no longer going to take anybody from the outside. If they were coming in from the outside, that they would at least have to join the center for about 90 days, understand it. And obviously, if you're in New York and we don't have a location up in New York, it's hard to come to Florida or North Carolina, which would be your closest state, and join for 90 days. So we weren't worried about growing in a quick manner. We wanted to, it's much easier to have successful centers and do it right, in my opinion, than to open up 1,000 of them with 250 that are failing. Right. So I just want to take my time, grow properly with people who get it. And I always tell people jokingly, we're a cult in a good way. It's a really great thing to be involved in, but you don't, as I get older, I don't want the headache of having to go in and correct people on operating their centers. I want them to understand our model.
Right. And that's great that there's a model that you're attracting, on the younger side. I think most businesses are, people go into business by the time, typically, I think in their probably late 30s, early 40s, certainly by, I think 45 is what the industry typically says. So that's great that you got people in that early 30s. And, I think there's not that many businesses that are really designed for couples. And like I said, your target or your clientele is female. 60% of them are female. So obviously it makes sense to have female owners. So that's really, really cool. Matt, the last question I always ask is, in wrapping up and closing, is there anything that you'd like to share that's gonna help a listener that maybe we didn't talk about? I didn't ask, or it didn't come up, or something else you maybe thought about and we passed it. But is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think the one thing I would say is dig deep when you're looking into purchasing any franchise, not even ours, anyone. Really ask hard-hitting questions. Dig deep into the company history, get to know the owners, see if they walk out what they say they walk out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people talk. Also in this industry, the negative side is there's, people sell you a lot of really good stuff, but in the end, work is work. It's hard. Any business is hard. You're going to end up being 50, 60 hours in your business for the first couple of years. That's life. So don't think you're buying another job. Really look at it like, how do I build a business, and treat it like a business? Make sure you understand the marketing components, the financial components, the lead generation components, your advertising components. Be very deliberate and intentional when you are looking for a franchise.
Yeah, that is so wise, and I'll put in a little bit of a plug for one of the things that I do, which is franchise brokering or franchise consulting. It always amazes me when I've seen someone, a friend or a friend of a friend or an acquaintance that has waded through the thousands and thousands of franchise concepts on their own and bought a franchise without some guidance. You wouldn't usually do your taxes without the guidance of an advisor, and buying a franchise, I think, is kind of the same thing.
I agree. Yep.
And it's I was saying this to a potential client of mine, consulting client, yesterday, about how Actually, no, it was in a coaching session with a client, and what I said to them is because they were master franchisees, so they're recruiting franchise partners, and I said to them, this is much more like a marriage. You can't. It's not like getting a job. You can't just be upset about it or not like the person after a few months and just leave.
Yeah.
It's just not that easy. And
Yeah,
so,
very true.
as you said, treat it with a lot more regard and respect in the selection. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, hey, Matt, thanks. I really appreciate it. And
You're welcome.
Again, www.hewfitness.com if you want to follow up with Matt. And
Correct.
thanks, Matt.
Thank you.